Hi, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, and we'll start the meeting with the number of people we have at this time. Welcome to the Alberta Energy Regulators information session on rock-hosted minerals. This session is the second and the final phase of our engagement for minerals regulation. My name is Carol Stark, and I work in the Engagement and Communications branch at the AER. I'm your moderator for today's session. I want to recognize all of you who have gathered in this virtual space from across the province and share with you who's in the room. And I can see that a number of people have signed on, but we do expect quite a few more to sign on in the next while here. We have more than 300 people registered to attend the event, and these people are representing the minerals industry, municipalities and other governments, First Nation, Métis settlements and Métis communities, landowners and land users, environmental and other non-government organizations, education and research institutes, and interested members of the public. Also in attendance to provide their support are staff from the Alberta Energy Regulator, the Alberta Geological Survey, and the Government of Alberta. I'd like to start by acknowledging and taking this opportunity to respectfully acknowledge the traditional territories of people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai Nations of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda Nation, which includes the Chiniki, Bearpaw, and Wesley First Nations. The City of Calgary, or Mohkinstsis, is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I'll now pass you on to Tyson Flynn, Vice President, Regulatory Enhancement at the AER, for his opening comments. Welcome, Tyson.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Carol. As Carol described, we have more than 160 participants here today, which is very exciting to see that level of turnout for the group. I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today and helping to form the future of mineral resource development in the province. As many of you know, the mineral resource development is going to be a key component of the Government of Alberta's plan to diversify the economy, and in particular, the energy and resource sectors. To support this endeavor, the AER's oversight is expanding to include the safe, orderly, and environmentally responsible development of minerals. Before we begin the process of drafting the tools to regulate mineral development, we do want to hear from the licensees and stakeholders included in this call. Sessions like this are critical both for gathering information as well as getting sort of on-hand feedback from the licensees here. So thank you again for taking the time to participate. I do hope and trust that you'll find the next 2 hours both informative and that you'll be able to voice your opinion about the direction we're going. We have some really great speakers lined up to show you the work we've done to date and where we're going. So with that, let's get started, and I'll hand it back to Carol. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tyson. So I'll now give you a quick overview of today's session. As Tyson said, this is an opportunity for both information sharing and information gathering. Therefore, the agenda has two main parts to it. The presentations will be to share, we'll share information with you, and that'll take about approximately 40 minutes. And then there will be time for you to ask questions about topics or issues that are on your mind, and that'll take about approximately an hour. And we really want to hear from you and learn from you about your topics and issues and ideas as a starting point for our whole engagement program with minerals. Following the opening remarks and introductions, the presentations will include some background information on the process of regulatory development, what's happened so far, including the engagement process to date for minerals. A review of regulation, which will include the role of the regulator and our regulatory authority. Then let's talk about minerals. And this section will include the types of minerals, the potential of mineral development in Alberta, and it will include a demo of the Alberta Geological Survey's interactive minerals map, which I think you'll find quite interesting because it'll be a very solid tool for you to use going forward. Following that, we'll focus in on rock-hosted minerals and discuss how risk is considered in regulation. And finally, an explanation of our next steps before opening it up for your questions. Before we start, there's an important item to mention, and it's that this entire meeting is being recorded, as was noted in the registration process. So by registering, you have agreed to that recording. That recording will be posted on our website for future reference and open access. So for the presenters today, we have 4 main presenters for the information session, and they are all experienced and talented members of our minerals team. Jeff Moore is the Acting Director of Minerals Strategy and Implementation. Sandra Blaise is AER's Senior Advisor, Regulatory. Jan Rempel is a Senior Advisor, Operational Liaison and Integration. And Kelsey McCormick is the Director, Geology and Resources at the Alberta Geological Survey. In addition to the AER presenters, we have at present 2 representatives from the Government of Alberta as well. And these include Shoshi Soni, who is the Acting Director of Emerging Resources, and Michael Ritchie, who's an Engagement Advisor in Indigenous Relations. So tips for participation today. The agenda and background materials that you received with your invitation does contain information about ways to participate in the session, but I'll just review that now for you. So number 1, we've asked for questions in advance to be read out, and I thank those of you who have sent in questions. We have a number of questions to share that we received in that way. During the meeting, we will use Microsoft Teams Q&A function to receive your written questions for those who can access the function. And the icon for the Q&A is in the top kind of center right corner of your screen. There's an icon that says Q&A with a question mark on it. And I ask that as you listen to the formal presentations, please make note of your questions and hold them until the presentations are finished. And the reason for this is that your question may be answered for you in the information that comes up a little later in the presentation. And lastly, if you're having any technical issues, please contact the AER inquiries line or send an email to minerals@aer.ca. And you also have that address in your background materials. I'll now pass the mic over to Jeff to begin his presentation.
Good afternoon, and thanks, Carol. So to begin, in 2020, the Government of Alberta announced the opportunity to develop emerging energy and mineral resources in Alberta. This work is part of the government's economic recovery efforts to relaunch and diversify Alberta's economy. Therefore, legislation was created to establish the AER as the primary regulator for new areas of resource development within Alberta. Under this direction, our authority expanded to include geothermal, brine-hosted minerals, well-based, and, once proclaimed, rock-hosted minerals, minerals extracted using traditional mining or quarrying techniques. The AER will also continue to regulate oil, oil sands, natural gas, and coal. In addition to these areas, the infographic on this slide shows what the AER currently regulates. As the Government of Alberta enacts the legislation and regulations, the AER has been developing the rules and directives to regulate each new area. The directives will ensure that all aspects of the life cycle, development from exploration, operation to closure, is carried out to protect public safety and the environment while ensuring that the regulatory system is as efficient as possible. The AER operates at arm's length from the Government of Alberta, an important note that is sometimes misunderstood. Therefore, legally, the AER can only provide regulatory oversight if it's granted to the AER through law. An important distinction between the government and the AER is that government sets the policy direction through acts and regulations, while the AER ensures this policy is met, typically through requirements that industry must follow within directives. This context is helpful as we go through these slides in understanding why there's so many steps in the AER become the regulator of new resource development, and why we can't consider all input we receive as it may not be within the AER's legal authority. So Why are new areas of resource development moving under the AER's purview? Well, it's really simple. The global demand for energy and resource development is growing, and therefore additional oversight is needed. The government of Alberta's mineral strategy states that it seeks to become a preferred producer and supplier of metallic and industrial minerals and mineral products, address the shift towards a lower carbon economy, strengthen and diversify Alberta's economy, create jobs, and attract investment. But to do this effectively, there needs to be oversight that is efficient and balances the interests of all Albertans. And that is where we come in. But before we look to the future, let's review how we got here. We'll go into greater detail of each of these milestones later in the presentation, but at a high level. In 2020-2021, the government publicly released its minerals strategy and announced Bill 82, the Minerals Resource Development Act, known as MRDA. That's the policy direction that we talked about earlier. This legislation set the intention for the AER to become the life cycle regulator of mineral resource development. During this time, one of the largest public geoscience research programs also commenced through the Alberta Geological Survey to improve our understanding of Alberta's mineral potential. Additionally, beginning in 2021, the AER created the regulatory framework to support the MRDA and the regulation of brine-hosted minerals. In March, the government proclaimed the first part of the MRDA, allowing the AER to begin accepting applications for some mineral types, such as lithium. Today, we're entering the next phase of engagements to support the remaining parts of the MRDA. Those minerals are under the umbrella term known as rock-hosted minerals. A vital step in achieving these milestones is feedback from the public to ensure we consider responsible development and what is in the best interest of all Albertans when making our decisions. So far, public participation in mineral resource development has included government-led engagements on the draft act and strategy. These engagements took place from 2020 through 2022 and included a survey, public engagement events, and targeted sessions, including one-on-one events with Indigenous communities and groups. Additionally, there were 4 formal AER-led engagement events in 2021, supporting brine-hosted minerals. Before finalizing the requirements through directives, the AER also sought input on the draft requirements through a public comment period. Before we move on, I think it is important to note that even after these engagements are complete and we start accepting applications, there are opportunities to provide us with even more input on individual applications and on future updates to these requirements. All that to say, this is not a one-and-done engagement approach. I would like to now pass this session on to Jan Rempel, who will talk a little bit more about the AER's role. Jan?
Thank you. When the AER becomes the life cycle regulator of these emerging resources, that means we provide oversight throughout all phases of development. The 4 phases of energy resource development include exploration, initiation, which is the application processes, construction, operation, and closure, including reclamation. Directives, rules, and manuals are examples of regulatory instruments that establish what industry is expected to do to develop Alberta's energy resources at each phase. Our regulations follow the Government of Alberta's direction, and we attempt to strike a balance through our requirements to protect public safety, environmentally responsible development, and an efficient resource development process. When these rules and requirements are not followed, we have enforcement tools to hold operators accountable and to bring them back into compliance. That said, there are aspects of this work that would fall outside of the AER's authority. I will use an analogy to explain what we do, and we recognize it's an oversimplified explanation. I'd like to equate the AER's role to a teacher. Teachers have a curriculum that they must follow as determined by the Government of Alberta. That said, they can create classroom rules based on that direction and what is in the best interest of all of their students. This balance can be tricky as not every student's wants and experiences are the same. A balanced approach is needed. Once the rules are shared, this gives students a roadmap that helps prevent rule breaking. But this does not mean that all students will follow the rules 100% of the time, either intentionally or unintentionally. When rules are not followed, there are consequences for these actions that a teacher must enforce to prevent further impacts on other students, to help them get back on track, and to avoid the future rule breaking. In mild cases, this looks like a warning. In more extreme cases, the consequence becomes more serious. So what is within our regulatory authority? Firstly, expanding our oversight to include minerals requires several steps, including the creation and proclamation of the Act. In this case, the Mineral Resource Development Act is like the curriculum. The Government of Alberta manages this. The rules are the framework for further detailed requirements. Rules are created collaboratively between the Government of Alberta and the AER. The above simply demonstrates that it is a shared responsibility. The directive contains specific requirements, and the directive is the responsibility of the AER to create and enforce, similar to those classroom rules. These engagements support the AER in creating draft requirements for the directive, which are posted for public comment. During the public comment period, the public can review what we have drafted and provide feedback that may impact our final decisions. Topics outside of our authority are shared with the appropriate group. For example, our legal authority does not include mineral rights, known as tenure, surface rights, land use, cumulative impacts, and Crown consultation. These reside with the Government of Alberta. It is also important to note that agreements between an operator and the public, including landowners and municipalities, in most instances are outside of the AER's scope to enforce. That said, we recognize that these topics are connected. Therefore, we have representatives from the Government of Alberta to hear any input you have that falls within their authority and to answer any questions you have related to those matters. That concludes the high-level background and context about who we are and what we do. I'd now like to provide information on minerals. So when talking about minerals in Alberta, we are including what's known as critical and rare earth minerals, as noted on your screen. There is high global demand for them, as they can be used for ingredients in batteries, portable devices, TVs, toothpaste, buildings, eyeglasses, vehicles, hospital equipment, and many other daily use items. Everyone participating here today is doing so thanks to the minerals used in your computer and smartphone. Once the Mineral Resource Development Act is fully proclaimed, the AER will oversee all minerals from lithium to limestone to gold and silver to vanadium and uranium. A few exceptions are noted on your screen, including sand, gravel, peat, marl, ammonite, and clay. As noted earlier, our process to develop regulations to support the development of minerals is being done in phases. Brine-hosted regulatory development occurred first, and we can now accept applications for these types of minerals. To explain the groupings, brine-hosted mineral resources are found in underground saltwater and are mostly extracted through well infrastructure. Lithium is a prime example. On the landscape, mineral extraction from brines looks like a traditional oil or gas well operation, like the one you see on your left. This next phase of engagement supports the regulatory development for rock-hosted mineral resources. These minerals can be obtained using traditional mining or quarrying, and they will look similar to other surface or underground mining operations on the landscape, similar to what you see on the screen. Minerals can be extracted from rock using in situ methods, also known as solution mining. This includes dissolving minerals in place and processing them on the surface. An example is shown on the top right of your screen. In situ extraction involves minimal ground disturbance. A key step in providing input on rock-hosted minerals is to understand where they are located. Certain areas of the province are more likely to see interest in mineral exploration and development than other areas based on Alberta's geology. Kelsey from the Alberta Geological Survey is going to provide you information on their mineral mapping program and Alberta's mineral potential. Over to you, Kelsey.
Great, thanks, Jan. So before I get started, I'd like to take a minute to explain who the AGS is and a little bit about our role. Firstly, we are a branch within the Alberta Energy Regulator, and we're here to help inform and support science and data-driven decision-making as it relates to regulation. We have been around for over 100 years to conduct research and share data about Alberta's geology and numerous resources, including mineral resources. A fun fact, one of our very first publications from the Alberta Geologic Survey was actually about Alberta's mineral resources. So I'm really excited to be here today to share updates on the amazing data and information that is available on our website. Our available publications range from reports, maps, data, to interactive tools and applications. The images that you see on the screen are all examples of items that can be found on our website, all free of charge. So to put it simply, we're a bunch of a passionate group of science nerds who love talking about rocks and minerals. So in order to undertake this investigation and better understand Alberta's mineral potential, we partnered with the Government of Alberta in 2020 to undertake one of the largest mineral mapping programs in the province's history. As part of our research, we took to the skies using planes, peered from space using satellites, and traveled across the province examining rock samples, cores, and brines. To better understand how these mineral deposits formed, we even examined ancient rock samples, some of which formed approximately 3 billion years ago, when microbial life was just blooming on Earth, way, way before the time of the dinosaurs, which is about 250 to 66 million years ago, relatively recently when you think of geologic timescale. So our goal, and with part of this investigation, was to collect key geoscience data in strategic locations about where and how the mineral deposits in Alberta came to be. This data collaboration with the Government of Alberta was part of a multi-year initiative and included collecting publicly available data and releasing it on our website, as well as interpreting this data to build interactive maps, technical reports, and journal publications. It also includes giving public presentations just like this to help all Albertans understand how minerals formed and developed across the province and how that might impact them. There's a lot of great information about Alberta's geology, geoscience, and resources, including lots of new data on mineral resources that are available on the AGS website, including a number of interactive web mapping applications, one of which, the Alberta Interactive Mineral Map, I'm happy to be here to demonstrate for you today. So once, if you go to the Alberta Geologic Survey and navigate to our Alberta Interactive Mineral Map, you'll see a little bit of a disclosure statement. But once you agree to that and click OK, you're going to come up to the application just as you're seeing on the screen here. So there's a number of different data sets, and I'm going to be working with Neil to show you some of the great functionality that's available through this mapping application. So on the left-hand side of your screen, we've got the mineral and geology legend layer pulled up right now. And you can see there's a number of boxes, check boxes there. Those are all different data sets that you can have access to. So what I'm going to maybe ask Neil to do really quickly is scroll to the top and maybe just turn on a few of them, like the metallic mineral occurrences map, You can even turn on the next few as well, just to give people an example of all the different data sets that are there. There's lithium, industrial minerals, even helium is right there as well, and as well as kimberlites. So there's lots of different data sets that are available in this geology, mineral and geology layer. The next tab over, it's also, you'll see like that's the icon with the 3 layers. This one is actually going to give you access to some of the base layers. This is some really, really great information that help orient you to various areas of the province. So it's got grids, land use frameworks. This is where you'll find a lot of the roads, rivers, lakes, streams, but you will notice that some of the text is in black and other ones are gray. The grayed out options are available for you, even if you won't let you click on them until you zoom into the map to a certain resolution. Then you'll be able to have access to some of those layers. You'll see them start to come on as you zoom in close enough. So that's the only reason they're kind of grayed out there. As you zoom in, you'll be able to see them, and as you zoom out, they'll shut off and go gray. So that's what those are there for. Lots of options there for you to explore. One of the things that so what I'm going to get Neil to go back over to the mineral and geology layer, and let's just turn off some of those data sets. We're going to focus this demonstration specifically on the metallic minerals occurrences. So yeah, if you want to open that up, Neil, there you go. You can see the legend there, and you can see all the different points, and they're colored based on mineral type. So we've got copper, iron, zinc, the list goes on. But what I'm going to show you here today is how you can filter out only the data and the information that you're looking for specifically. So let's just say you're interested in rare earth elements. And as Jan had mentioned in her the part she just talked about, rare earth elements are used in a lot of the high-tech devices, like your computers, your cell phones, and the digital displays. So those are of high interest lately. So what I'm going to get Neil to do is go up onto the right-hand side and click on the query button. That's it right there. It's got a little magnifying glass. This is a whole series of pre-built queries for you to allow you to explore the data. So we're going to go right to the metallic mineral occurrences, primary commodity. Perfect. If you want to click on that one, Neil, this is going to allow you to filter through the data that you're seeing on your screen here. So if Neil clicks the drop-down list, and let's pick rare earth elements. Perfect. Yep, there you go. Spot on. And if you hit apply at the bottom, it's going to maybe take a few seconds here, but it's going to pull out just the rare earth element data. So you can see all of that information. Now, if you wanted to, if you were interested in just pulling this data and extracting it out and using it within your own application, you can do that. So if I can get Neil to kind of go over to that right-hand side of the screen and show there's the 3 little buttons under the results. Yep, if you click on that and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's export to CSV. So that'll allow you to export that data into a tabular format, or like to look at it in, like, say, an Excel type spreadsheet. You can look at it that way. You can go down. The next one down is feature collection. So you'd be able to export that into another kind of shapefile and use it in another GIS platform. Or you can export as a GeoJSON file as well. It's another spatial kind of file format that you can access. So if you wanted to look at the data that way, you can. That'll allow you to export just the data that you have queried out. So just what you've selected here that's highlighted in this kind of these bluey purple dots. What I'm going to get Neil to go over and do now is go over and if you click on any one of those dots that are on the map, you can get some information specifically about that. Right, perfect. That's awesome, Neil. This is one you get to choose whichever area of the province you're interested. As you'll notice, rare earth elements, we've got quite a lot in the Northeast, lots in the Southwest. So there's lots of information to explore on rare earth elements across the province. But as you see here, Neil just selected one of them, and in that little pop-up window is lots of information that's available on that data set. And so you can see what rock formation the sample was collected from. And if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, that little icon you see there with mineral data, if you click on that one, which I'm not going to get Neil to do here today, because what it's going to do is actually take you to our portal site where you can then download that entire data set. So it's going to take we'll have access to the entire metallic mineral occurrences data set to download. So there's lots of options here for how to access, query, filter out, and you can visualize it here with all of the different data sets that are available in those two legends, the mineral and geology layers, as well as the base layers data, or you can go and download it yourself. One thing I do want to make sure to show you is if you want to switch from selecting the rare earth element data and maybe look at a different mineral. So what you're going to need to do that is to go back up to the three dots under the results tab, perfect, and go right down to the very bottom and you say remove this result. That's going to wipe out the query. And then that'll give us that opportunity to maybe look at another one. So let's go back and pick a different, let's maybe go with vanadium. Vanadium has been a hot topic lately. Vanadium, has lots of uses for steel alloys, nuclear reactors, and of course, lots of interest in rechargeable batteries. So if we look at vanadium and kind of scroll in, now we're looking at some of the vanadium data results in the southern portion of the province. You'll see the same thing. You are able to have that same functionality. You can go and download just that vanadium data and extract it, or you can go in and select that point, find out information about when and how that data was collected and the units that it was formed in. So what I'm going to get Neil to maybe do next is if you scroll out of, let's kind of zoom out. We'll go back and have a look at the entire province here. I want to make sure to show you another really, really amazing feature that we have available in this mapping application. So just quickly before I kind of jump to that, I want to do just those functionalities that are up there on the right-hand side. We've looked at the queries. There's other options for charts where some pre-established data. There's a measuring tool that's available. And as you move over to the far side of the screen, there is a print function. So you could zoom into an area of the province that you're interested in, pull up all the data that you'd like to see, and you do have the option to print the image that you've created on screen. So that's some great ways that you can access and leverage this information. And as we were chatting about just a few minutes ago about the massive program that we have underway to collect new mineral data across the province, we're going to keep updating this mapping application with that new information data as it becomes available. So it'll be a great source to check in for the latest and greatest. One of the features I want to just make sure to show you before we kind of cap off this quick demo is the feature to add your own data to this mapping application. So if you go back over to the left-hand side of the screen and click on the little icon, it's a picture of a map with the plus right there. Perfect, Neil. They've got a number of options. So there's a search function. You can search in the Esri kind of loaded grids and files. You can use the URL function, which will allow you to add data that's available online, or you can use the file function. And this is the one we typically see people most interested in using. That's going to let you upload data into this application and onto this map in a variety of formats. So you can see CSV, KML, the GeoJSON file, and shape files. There's lots of formats that are available to upload data onto this map and leverage this mapping application to view your data in conjunction with the data available through the application. So that's a really, really kind of quick overview. We only really touched skimmed the surface of some of the great information and data that's available in here. Lots of kimberlite indicator mineral data. I'd love to let you guys get in and explore this application further. So yeah, again, we just kind of skimmed across the surface. Lots to look at and see. So I'd encourage you, if you get the chance, to have a look at this mapping application, as well as a few others that we have available on the website as a great way to explore and interact with this newly available data. So with that, I want to thank Neil for all his help with this demonstration, and I'm going to pass it back over to Sandra to provide you with some more information on rock-hosted mineral regulation.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, and great presentation. And hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. So while this regulatory approach is new, extracting rock-hosted minerals is not. For example, limestone development has occurred in Alberta for a long time, and mineral regulation has existed within Alberta for decades through the Government of Alberta. However, responsibility for different legislative requirements were in multiple departments. By transitioning regulatory authority to the AER, we can create a more efficient and clearer regulatory process, becoming the life cycle regulator from exploration to closure. The AER can leverage more than 80 years of regulatory experience, which includes the oversight of mining. So, for example, there is policy and requirements in place for water conservation, reclamation, and public involvement. And on your screen are just some examples of regulations that we can reference. Again, these documents contain the direction industry must follow to operate within Alberta, and we can adopt or reference requirements found in other directives. So a good example is Directive 38, which sets out requirements for noise control, or Directive 56, which outlines requirements for participant involvement. We can also reference existing instructional resources known as manuals. Manual 19 explains the closure and abandonment activities of dams, and Manual 13 is the compliance and enforcement program. One thing that I want to note on this is anybody can read this at any time and has access to it at aer.ca. And finally, we can adopt our programs for inspections and audits, compliance and enforcement, public notice of application, the statement of concern review process, and hearing services. If there are gaps, we will create new requirements to mitigate risk specific to rock-hosted mineral development, either broadly or specific to the mineral. Last year, we sought public input on brine, and we made sure that the concerns identified were addressed through the new directive or through existing requirements such as emergency response planning. Or we implemented something new, such as Directive 90, brine-hosted mineral resource development. Input outside of our authority was shared with the appropriate group. We will follow the same approach for rock-hosted requirements by identifying first what is within our legal authority to consider, then see if it exists in other requirements, and finally, we'll consider it for the new directive. As the rules and requirements for rock-hosted minerals are not yet developed, we don't have those details yet, including how we'll mitigate all risk. Those answers will evolve as we all work together. That said, we can share how we consider risk at a high level. So most risk considerations fall within the categories you see on your screen. They generally relate to water, land use, conservation and reclamation, waste management and toxicity, air emissions, liability, and resource conservation. Our requirements are designed to mitigate risks within these categories. Using our experience from regulating oil and gas, oil sands, coal mines, through extensive research and data from groups like the AGS, and pulling from stakeholders and subject matter experts, we identify risks associated with activities. We then move through these scenarios to make sure that we have requirements in place that mitigate the risk and ways to make sure that the industry is complying. Our goal is to create requirements that allow us to make decisions in the public interest and yield the best possible outcome for public safety, environmental protection, and resource conservation. These requirements can restrict the type of activity or how an activity can occur, and they can place thresholds or limits on certain activities. Often, the AER requires the industry to demonstrate how they will conduct their operations safely and what plans they have in place in case of an emergency. Compliance in the form of inspections and audits is used to verify the companies operate within their approvals. We also monitor the financial health of operators to make sure that they can meet their end-of-life obligations. We also consider risk by increasing the scrutiny we have on an application if the activity introduces uncertainty or higher risks. If so, our technical experts take a closer look at it. This additional review could be triggered if applications involve new activities or technologies that are known stakeholder concerns about this activity, or there are known attributes of the project, like the location or operator, that make it potentially higher risk. We look at an operator's history of complaints, releases and spills, emergencies, and operational history, as well as factors such as how close a project are to people or environmental features. These considerations also help us plan inspections and audits, including if certain sites should be inspected or audited more frequently to confirm that they're operating how they're supposed to. If we find out they're not, we take enforcement measures, and these reviews are also triggered by public complaint. Our field inspectors follow up if there is a concern expressed in almost all cases. An exception to this could be The exception to this simply could be that it's not under our authority to inspect. Before I pass it back to Carol, I wanted to wrap up by saying that the Minerals Implementation Team all work and or raise families in Alberta, just like you. We sincerely care about what happens in our own backyard and feel very committed to hearing and considering your thoughts and ideas about how we can oversee minerals through regulation. And finally, again, I want to thank everybody for taking time to be here today and very much looking forward to the Q&A session. I would now like to pass it back to Carol to wrap up the formal presentation and talk about the next steps. Carol?
So thank you very much to Jeff, Sandra, Kelsey, and Jan for your presentations. Before I jump back with information to share about how you can share feedback, I'd like to just ask the person with their hands up, probably wanting to ask a question, if they can submit their question through the Q&A function. You might have missed in the beginning when I said we asked everybody to submit questions through the Q&A button, which is 1, 2, 3 icons to the right of the raise hands button at the top of your screen. And the reason is that we have muted the mics for this session and would like to have questions in writing. Thank you very much. So this virtual information session, as you can see in the slide, is the first step in the AER's engagement program for rock-hosted minerals. Yesterday, we hosted an engagement session, a virtual engagement session, the same as this one for First Nations, Métis settlements, and Métis communities. This is the second of the 2 virtual information sessions. Our intent with Let's Talk Minerals, which is our engagement program, is to both share and gather information to inform developments of the regulations, as Sandra has said. Following today's sessions, there are other formal ways for you to participate. So directly following this session, you will receive a survey by email. This is an opportunity for you to provide your feedback specifically on this event, and also to identify any topics of interest and concern that arose for you and specify what else you need to know about minerals or the regulatory process. The survey will provide us with both immediate feedback on what you thought of the session and initial information to help us develop topics and content for further engagement. Please submit your responses by July 26th. And we recognize that's only 1 week from today, but we really need to quickly assess your initial feedback and ideas. We need to know what you need so that we can tier and design our engagement program going forward to include what you're asking for. Also, instead of waiting for the survey email to come, on the very last holding slide of this presentation, you'll see a QR code on your screen. You can use your cell phone camera to hover over and access the link, and that will take you directly to the survey. So moving on, we will be designing and delivering engagement workshops. We are hosting 2 virtual workshops in August with industry. And then we're hitting the road around the province to host in-person workshops that are open to the public. These engagement workshops will allow for deeper discussion on key topics related to rock-hosted minerals, with the aim to gather input for the AER to consider in developing the regulatory framework. It's also a chance for you to connect directly with our technical experts. We'll prioritize the locations of the workshops in part based on the location of mineral deposits across the province. An email notifying you about the upcoming events will be sent once registration is open. Following the workshops, we'll provide all the engagement event participants with a summary of the input we've gathered. You'll receive the summary well before the public comment period in the fall of 2023. And at this public comment period, you'll have another opportunity to share your feedback on the actual draft written directive itself. It's important to note, I've just spoken about the formal ways to collect feedback. We are accompanying this with our ongoing attendance at conferences and events through our minerals at aer.ca inbox and the information we receive there, of which the address is on this slide, and also through existing meetings that we participate in throughout the province. To conclude this part of the information session, I'd like to emphasize that the AER is open to and encourages your feedback on an ongoing basis. If you have further information to share or questions to ask, please connect with us through any of these three means on the slide. You can visit the AER website. The minerals page will be updated as we have new information, and there is an opportunity for you to subscribe to the AER and the Alberta Geological Survey updates. As I noted earlier, the recording for this session will also be posted on the minerals page. Please share that information with other people in your network or in your community so that they can see this presentation as well. Use the minerals email if you require more information to send specific questions and feedback and to provide us with advice. And the people who answer or attend, I suppose, that minerals inbox are the people that you are hearing from today. So your questions will go and your information and advice will go directly to them. Lastly, call the AER inquiries line. Our staff can help and direct you to the right resources on a variety of topics. And don't forget to explore the AGS website for additional mineral resources or for other areas of interest. And I'm glad you had a chance to experience the demonstration of the interactive minerals map today.